Ethiopian Educational Information and Communication Technology presents Educational Satellite Television Programs.
Hello, teacher. Hello, students. Welcome to today's lesson on inhaled and exhaled air. In our last lesson, we learned about the mechanism of breathing. We discussed how the breathing structures function to enable respiration. We studied the movement of the intercostal muscles and diaphragm. We also defined inhalation, exhalation, and ventilation. Today, we will compare the composition of inhaled air versus exhaled air. We will also demonstrate the presence of carbon dioxide, water vapor, and heat in the air we exhale. Let us begin with a review activity. Students, do you recall the process of diffusion from our studies in a previous unit? Please take a few minutes to write down the definition of diffusion.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back. If you recall, diffusion is the process by which molecules spread from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration down a concentration gradient. A concentration gradient is the difference between the concentrations in a space. When molecules are evenly distributed throughout the space, molecules are in the state of equilibrium. Diffusion exchanges the air in the lungs during respiration. We know that inhaling supplies the body with the oxygen required for cellular respiration, while exhaling removes carbon dioxide from the body. When air is inhaled into the lungs, oxygen passes into the blood by diffusion along a concentration gradient. Simultaneously, carbon dioxide passes out of the blood into the air of the lungs along a concentration gradient. Since the movement of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place at exactly the same time, there is an exchange called a gaseous exchange. The exchange of gases occurs in the alveoli. If you recall, alveoli are small sacs with a large surface area that make up most of the lungs. Alveoli are an ideal site for the process of diffusion because they are moist, they have a large surface area, and they have a rich blood supply, which maintains steep concentration gradients. Within the alveoli, the gases in the air and the gases dissolved in the blood are separated by two cell layers. The distance is very short. Therefore, diffusion takes place very quickly. The blood that is pumped into the lungs from the heart is low in oxygen and high in carbon dioxide. Oxygen is regularly moved into the blood, but deoxygenated blood is constantly replacing it. On the other hand, carbon dioxide is regularly delivered to the lungs. It is diluted in the air that maintains the concentration gradient between the blood and the air in the lungs. The concentration gradient is made steeper every time the air moves into the lungs. This results in gas exchange in both directions along the steepest possible gradient. We know that gas exchange occurs because of the breathing movements of the rib cage and the diaphragm. If we study the gases that are inhaled and exhaled in the air, we can compare the composition of the gases and record how the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide change by diffusion. If you turn your attention to the table on the screen, you can see the the percentage of atmospheric gas in inhaled air and exhaled air. The amount of nitrogen in inhaled air is equal to that of exhaled air. The amount of oxygen in inhaled air is 21%, while the amount exhaled is 16%. The amount of carbon dioxide inhaled is 0.04%, while the amount exhaled is 4%. I am sure you noticed that oxygen levels are higher in inhaled air than in exhaled air, and carbon dioxide levels are higher in exhaled air than in inhaled air. The amount of water vapor in inhaled and exhaled air is different as well. Students, let us say that you breathe on a mirror. What happens to the mirror? Take a few minutes to consider this and write down your ideas.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Hello again, students. If you exhaled on a mirror, the mirror would become foggy. The air you breathe out contains more water vapor than the air you breathe in. Water vapor is clear, but when it becomes concentrated and condenses, it can clearly be seen. Exhaled air is also warmer than inhaled air. The human body temperature is normally 37 degrees Celsius, and the air inhaled is warmed in the nasal passage before it enters the lungs. By the time it is exhaled, it is close to body temperature. Students, we have time for one last activity. Please fill in the blanks to complete the table and write a sentence comparing the composition of inhaled air and exhaled air.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. let's get back to our lesson.
Hello again, class. I hope you were able to complete this activity. Your table should be filled out like this. Inhaled and exhaled airs contain 80% nitrogen. Inhaled air contains 21% oxygen and 0.04% carbon dioxide. Exhaled air contains 16% oxygen and 4% carbon dioxide. Exhaled air is warmer and contains more carbon dioxide and water vapor than inhaled air. Inhaled air contains more oxygen than exhaled air. Great work today, everyone. This brings us to the end of our lesson. Today, we compared the composition of inhaled air and exhaled air. We discussed that diffusion is the process that exchanges air in the lungs with that of the bloodstream. And we learned that gaseous exchange is the movement between oxygen and carbon dioxide during respiration. Until our next lesson, thank you, teacher. Thank you, students.